Welcome back. It is my great pleasure to introduce the next speaker, Lila Gleitman. Lila got her PhD in linguistics from the University of Pennsylvania in 1967. She then spent the next 3 years as the entire Swarthmore College Linguistics Department before she moved to the University of Pennsylvania Psychology Department in 1971, where she has remained except to visits for a long list of distinguished universities and institutes. Lila's work on the structure of the meta lexicon of language learning has had this said about it. Well before it was fashionable to be interdisciplinary, she was forging the ties that now inextricably bind linguistics to psychology and characterize the cutting work in this area. She is one of those rare people who alters the course of intellectual inquiry. Lila has a long list of academic children and grandchildren. She also has a long list of awards, of course. But her academic children and grandchildren form the who's who of psychology and linguistics, and many are sitting in this room. Lila is also no stranger to Rutgers. She's taught co-seminars just about yearly with a variety of Rutgers faculty members. And Lila knows Randy and Rochel as a colleague and a friend from the early golden days at Penn, and has known them from the very beginning on. So now, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So just a few words about how I met and have interacted forever after with Randy and Rochel. I was a linguist at birth and by training when I came out of graduate school. And to my surprise, and I think saying something about what they mean by the golden years at Penn, although I had never taken a course in psychology, I found myself invited to become a faculty member in the Department of Psychology at Penn, which was absolutely wonderful, as you've been hearing from everybody. And so, of course, by then I was too old to be a student of Randy and Rochel. But even so, since I knew nothing about psychology, I learned psychology from this wonderful faculty, from Randy and Rochel, from my husband Henry, and a few other people in the Penn psychology department who were thinking very much in an interdisciplinary way. Across the road, there was Zedek Harrison in the linguistics department, and his great student, Noam Chomsky, just graduating at the moment, and there was the digital computer that had been given to the university by the Rand Corporation, so linguistics was turning computational, and cognitive psychology was turning computational, and we had a wonderful time together. I just want to say remind you of one or two words you heard constantly all day yesterday and already this morning with regard to Randy and Rochel, and that is generosity. In my case, was sorely needed. We became very warm friends, but they had an enormous effect on the intellectual content of what I do and how I think. And I want to say in particular that Rochel began to invite me to serve on graduate committees of students that she was advising. And this also had a great influence on me. And maybe a couple of people who are sitting in the room here today, and a couple whose work will touch on some of what I'll talk about today. So we were entwined intellectually and personally all along our adult lives. And it was intellectually extremely wonderful. And as Susan Golden Meadow put it yesterday, it was not only intellectually fun, it was just fun. Okay, it was great. Right? So, today I want to talk about one property, how language and cognition come together. It's a property that has obsessed me since I began thinking about language structure and concepts. And that is a property of symmetry. And in case you hadn't guessed, the title of this talk is after the great poet William Blake, who you may also know is a great printmaker, an artist, and his mystical tiger, burning bright, is one of the ways that I've always thought about symmetry. So here we are with tigers and symmetry. But here's one last word about this. Do you remember this, Rochel?
Oh, I remember it very
I
clearly.
think it was Randy who told me the story.
Yeah.
There they were with their 3-year-old. I think.
No, he was in diapers. He was
He was in diapers.
He was 14 months or something.
And they were where, on Fire Island or something?
No, we were in a creek that ran through the woods in the summer house we had in Quakertown.
All right, so there they were, and the kid reaches under the water and he picks out a piece of shale or something.
An old asphalt shingle in a triangular form.
There you go, in a roughly triangular form. Roughly, yes. Socrates, or is it Plato, points out, only a roughly triangular form. But the little baby reaches in and he says, "Look, a triangle." And I sort of got it, but I got it more and more as time went on. Randy and Rochel's abiding interest in this Platonic question of how human beings and wasps, I suppose,
Are you referring to Randy or?
that kind of wasp and the other kind of wasp. Look at the world.
We saw them on television. We went from television to this thing.
Yeah. As far as we can recollect, we never spoke to him about triangles. I was stunned. I couldn't imagine where that word came from.
Spoke about squares and polygons.
Well, there is a little learning that has to go on, because you don't pronounce triangle in Greek. Sort of, that was a good example, but you don't pronounce triangle in Urdu. Right? So there's something to be learned. But maybe not about the notion of triangle, which comes to us for free. Okay, so, wrong way. Okay, so what I'm going to mean by symmetry is what everybody means by symmetry. It's meant in logic or mathematics or everyday intuition, having to do with the invariance of some relation over some transformations like reflection. So in particular, if x is equal to y, then y must be equal to x. If John meets Bill, then Bill meets John, and so forth. And you can think about various predicates in the English language that appear to embody this kind of symmetry. So my question really is how we come to knowledge of this property as it manifests itself in the language that we learn. So, I'm going to talk about it from two perspectives today, basically. And the first is a challenge, which I guess some of you know, if you're in cognitive psychology, some fascinating work and insights from Amos Tversky, in which he got very interested in similarity because it figures so centrally in psychological explanation that it deserves a serious analysis. And he began to analyze the notion, I'm talking about the notion, not the word, the notion of similarity, and uncovered some strange phenomena that led him in a generation or two generations of psychologists to the position that maybe similarity isn't a symmetrical concept at all, in the sense in which I described on the last slide. Maybe similarity, and so that's one of the things that I'll talk about. The other thing that really, or at least underlyingly, I mean to talk about acquisition. How would you learn the meaning of the word similar? It's not like learning the meaning of the word doggy. I mean, I don't know how. It's really a mystery how you would learn doggy too, but at least there's something in the world to hang on to. Some perceptual input that has some kind of relevance to how you would construct how would you find out that dog means that the sound dog refers to things like dogs. But when you hear a word like similar, there's really nothing stable in the world that you can point to. It's sort of like Brian Butler was mentioning for the case of number. When you say 3, you don't know what's going to be there perceptually in the world. There's no stability to it whatsoever. And here, this is expressed in part by Nelson Goodman, who was obsessed also by similarity. And as a matter of fact, he took a very dim view of similarity because he said indefinite, to say two things, any two objects in the world are similar to each other in indefinitely many ways. Okay, so if I show you two things and I say they're similar, there's no information, there's no content to this, unless I tell you in what respects I'm talking about similarity. And once I've said I'm talking about similarity in such and such respect, I'm saying two objects are similar because they share just these properties in common, then you needn't have bothered to say similarity in the first place. You just might as well have said these two objects share these properties in common. So he came to the view, not that similarity wasn't symmetrical, but because it was nothing but symmetrical. That is vacuous. There's no information. How would you, if you were learning English, come to the conclusion that similar means similar? Okay, what's the information? So that's sort of the question, and it's very hard to answer. I'm going to, in the second part of this talk, talk about this somewhere, but come to it from a other way around way of thinking. And here you'll see a title of a paper from Gillian Saikov, who's here somewhere in the audience, a linguist who spent much of her career looking at simple contact languages, where people who don't speak the same language get together, sort of me Tarzan, you Jane, kind of situation, and try to mumble along to each other when they come into contact. Like everybody comes to the plantation, but they all speak different languages. So how are they going to deal with each other? They begin to say a few words and so forth. And you can ask what such a contact looks like, what a contact language like that looks like, what we call the pidgin. But then time goes on, if everybody hangs out at the plantation for long enough, and they get married, and they have children, or they don't get married, and they have children, okay? Because that's the only way to communicate. This is the linguistic input to these children, the simple contact language. And what happens as Saitoff and many others eventually show, is that as the language acquires native speakers in this way, the language begins to grow and deepen and become rich in a very, very rapidly and in characteristic ways that tell us about the nature of language and perhaps something about the nature of cognition. So here's this perfect title, okay? Many people study the acquisition of language by native speakers, and this is the acquisition of native speakers by language. Oops, I knew I would spill that. And this whole thing's going to blow up now. Never mind that, I'll get this. The case that I'll mention sort of toward the end, and this has to do with some research that Susan Goldman Meadow and I and other collaborators are doing, concerns Nicaraguan Sign Language. Maybe you've heard about it. It's grown quite famous. It's a case where there were many deaf children, widely separated from each other, growing up in homes where people, the other people weren't deaf, so they just spoke, in this case Spanish, is the language being spoken, but the children didn't learn Spanish because they couldn't hear it. They're isolated in the home. The parents aren't deaf, so there's no sign language. They couldn't learn sign language either. And it is well known, partly from seminal work from Susan Golden Meadow, that children in this situation do begin to gesture mimetically. And then the language grows and grows and grows, but of course it's very idiosyncratic. And perhaps each kid does what he or she does, and these children are alone and widely separated under circumstances like the one I'll talk about here. In the 1980s, a deaf school was opened in the area of Managua, Nicaragua, and all these isolated deaf children were identified and brought to the school. They were between 4 and 14 years of age in this very first moment when they came together. And the authorities, Sandinistas, I should say, had jiggered together some people who knew a little finger spelling, a little this, a little that, but they were people to be the teachers and maybe teach them Spanish or maybe teach them something as they came together. But whatever it is they tried to teach the children didn't learn. Instead, they began to gesture to each other. And they gestured and their little home sign to each other. And lo and behold, 30 years later, we have a very rich, full-blooded, formalized, pretty settled language, which in many fundamental ways isn't that different from English or French or Urdu, all invented and organized like the triangle. By the way, human beings systematize, in this case, their language. So that was the second part of what I talked to. So if I'm running out of time, I'm obsessed of the first part. Somebody pinched me that I have to get to this before we all go to lunch. Okay. So obviously I'll be talking about whether children like this, who had no outside education, we're talking about 4-year-old children, how would they, or could they, or when could they, come to deal with abstract notions like reciprocality and symmetry, and build those into the language. Okay. So first things first, I want to talk first about the surprising insights from Tversky when he began to look at similarity. So being a psychologist, he did experiments. So we got hordes of, I suppose, Stanford undergraduates, and he asked them this kind of question: assess the degree to which North Korea is similar to Red China and other country comparisons. Okay, so that's an easy task, so the subjects did it, and I suppose the similarity is quite high in this case, so the subjects looked. So on a scale from 1 to 5 that they were given, maybe the mean would be something like 4. But then he got another horde of undergraduates, and he asked them this question, an equivalent. Assess the degree to which Red China is similar to North Korea. And of course, I think you can probably intuit this, but I'll bludgeon you with some more cases as we go along. To his surprise, I suppose, to his surprise, you didn't get the same ratings, right? So this seems like a flat violation of the symmetrical entailment, right? Because the two things are similar to each other, and if similarity is symmetrical, then how can X be more similar to Y than Y is to X? Well, he said, it looks as if, after all, similarity is not, psychologically speaking, a symmetrical concept at all. Okay, well, I'm going to try to rehabilitate without denying, rather, accepting enthusiastically Tversky's insights, try to rehabilitate the notion for you that your intuition that similarity was symmetrical was correct in some sense. And I'll try to do that in 2 ways. First of all, by trying to get you to agree that there are lots and lots and lots of symmetrical predicates in English or any language, and they all show these same disparities. So it's not a property of similarity, it's a general property of how one talks about symmetry in natural language. And that obliquely has been an answer to some of Nelson Goodman's philosophical objections as well. At least it's going to be of relevance. Okay, so I should point out, starting, it isn't the only question that Tversky asked. Of course, he did a bunch of kinds of things, so he would say to people, which would you prefer to send? Okay. As opposed to assess the degree to which. So you can sort of change the surface of this, not just simply a function of this particular question. Which would you rather send? North Korea is similar to Red China, or Red China is similar to North Korea? And you know what you would prefer to send. I mean, strange question, but people, by and large, everybody answers it the same way. Oh, so, here we go. Now I'm beginning to try to point out to you that it's always this way with symmetricals, or indeed any comparison. If you're an English speaker, or the speaker of any language, you're going to see these strange properties. So, suppose I'm going to say equal here because it's a good case. I mean, I hope you hope with me that equal is a symmetrical concept. Okay? We passionately hope that we can change the nature of mathematics and logic and everything else. So equal is going to be symmetrical, very symmetrical. Okay, so here we go. Assess the degree to which the least of the citizens is equal to the president. Okay, so here comes to mind Abraham Lincoln, okay. But suppose I said to you, the president is equal to the least of the citizens. Well, I have to push hops. GW or somebody like that, I think. So when you're thinking of this A here, you're thinking, oh yes, we're raising the least of the citizens to equality. But when you say this the other way, it sounds like you're saying we're lowering the people to equality with the president. There's a real difference here. Right? Now, it's a different one. Locally different from the country comparisons I showed you, but only locally different by whatever little extra semantic ginger the particular word is giving you. But it's the symmetry that's doing this. So, okay, so meanwhile, in another field, in another department, there was a linguist named Len Talman who was saying, you know, people don't think about space metrically. Some of this work was going on in psychology too, cognitive maths and so forth and so on. So my house is closer to the garage than the garage is to my house. Okay, so or in Talman's case, people prefer to say, which would you prefer to say? The bicycle is near the garage, or the garage is near the bicycle. Well, people again, they show a preference, even though things have to be equally near to each other. That's just a fact. But that Townley sort of had nice terminology for this. He said, well, you're not thinking about space metrically. You're thinking about a ground, a layout, and on which some figure moves. Okay? So it's more like a match to standard, or a less prototypical, to use Tversky's term, item in the category to a more prototypical one, or a figure, a stable figure on a moving ground. So you will see how far this goes. People also show you a preference. If you ask them what they'd rather say, they say, my sister met the Pope. They don't say, the Pope met my sister. They say they prefer that. Well, you can chew that over for a while. But the same thing is going on. Just one more example here. And you see this in the newspapers and so forth all the time. Everybody who does a comparison, they think they're inventing this for the first time. You can sort of hear this writer crowing to himself. Oh, it is not a comparison between Federer and Nadal anymore. It's a comparison between Nadal and Federer. And he lays it out very nicely. He's, insofar as their dominance on the tennis court changes, the order of the nets changes. Okay? Now, very recently, I'm looking at Ellen Markham and her chestnut here, this kind of distinction operates in social circumstances. So if you, I suppose, I'm not sure exactly of the kind of work they did, but I'm sure if you look at a corpus, you're going to see things like women are equal to men much more often than you'll see men are equal to women. Right? And you can hear this, right? Well, I'm not quite through. Okay, so here's a thought experiment, right? So imagine in your mind some case of the man is tied to the tree, and I think you'll imagine something like that, right? Illustrations thanks to Henry Gleitman. Okay. But now suppose I say the tree is tied to the man. Okay, this is really nice, right? What happened? Tree got small, it even got uprooted. It came up out of, I shouldn't say ground, I don't mean it, but notice that the man is now the stable thing, you know, where he is, okay? The tree is just this little thing, right? So that's what happened. So there it is. Now it's very easy to draw this intuition from ordinary mortals, college undergraduates, in this case Penn undergraduates, and ask what they're doing as you keep changing these symmetrical predicates, many of them, marry, divorce, meet, match, equal, similar, and so forth. Although they're locally giving you different answers, they're really just doing a couple of kinds of things over and over again. In these experiments, we're saying to them, because first we did this, which would you rather say? Blah, blah, blah. And they have a choice. Now there's an interview, and in the interview we say, well, you said you'd rather say the bicycle is near the garage, and the garage is near the bicycle. Can you think of an occasion where you'd rather say the garage is near the bicycle, and so forth? And for all of these symmetrical pictures. And one thing people do, okay, these slides are really out of order, but they change the category together. So we go back to Lincoln and George Bush. Are there any occasions on which you would want to say this the opposite way? And this isn't exquisite. Ordinary undergraduates can do it even if they majored in. Okay. They say, well, maybe you're talking about how tall the presidents are. So change the category of comparison. So it isn't as if you'd be less likely to say it and it means the same thing. It means something different. So if you meant something different, you would say it in another way. Or else, as in the cases I showed you, you change who's dominant in this category. And I kind of love these answers, because they're very clear when you look at the spatial one, right? So, yeah, you have this great, huge concrete bicycle statue in the square. It's stable, you know where it is. There's this teeny garage on wheels going around it. Okay? Then you would say, the garage is near the bicycle. Well, this is my favorite. I love this guy who said, if I park my bicycle somewhere, and I was down, somebody built a garage next door. So, which is familiar to you, which is the standard in some sense. Okay. So, here's some interdisciplinary comment. Okay. So this is the way, madly oversimplified, linguists would think about these constructions that have been used. Because it isn't just a concept, it was a concept in a sentence, in a construction. And it isn't the case when you say a sentence of this kind that what you're doing is just shifting positions. You're shifting, it is true that you're shifting which is serially first in English in such a description. But it's more than that because, at least according to linguists, words are organized, words and phrases are organized in sentences in terms of a hierarchical structure. And then when you make a comparison of this sort, that first noun phrase, call it the subject of the sentence, is that noun phrase that's immediately dominated by the sentence. That's very high up in the tree. And as for the object, it isn't just second. In fact, you can do passive, and this will remain the same. The serial order will change. The object noun phrase is more deeply embedded in the tree. It's dominated by the sentence node, of course, but only as mediated by the verb phrase, the verb phrase node. So they're different in more than order. They're different in their hierarchical position, and that's what's doing the work here. Here's the ground, here's the figure. It's this asymmetry. So notice we usually use this asymmetry to say who did what to whom. So drum, so bell, so the highest note in simplest cases is the guy who did it, and then in the lower note is the guy that got done to him. Arguments of different kinds show up in asymmetrically in the structure of this sentence. And this is sort of the way we humans, construct and read semantics off of these hypothetical representations of a language. Okay. And in the case of comparison statements, since there is no doer and done to, right? So North Korea isn't the agent of Red China's similarity. It isn't an agent-patient relationship. It's a matched comparison. So language commandeers this asymmetry to express what? The respects in which things are similar. Notice that this is sort of rescuing, to use similarity this way, you're therefore giving the listener a hint as to the respects of that statement. Right? The respects in which things are similar. At least you're saying, here's these two guys, they're in the same category. This one is more prototypical, or the ground object, or the, and this figure is the one that's related to it, and so on. Okay, so let me prove this to you. Okay. If all of that is true, it should be that these nonsense symbols, again, these are Henry Gleitman's favorite nonsense subject. If it's really true that the position in the structure is what's legislating who's the figure and who's the ground, who's the prototype and who's the variant in a comparison, then if I compare things and the nominals are zup and rif, they should take on this semantic. Right? Now, so how would we show that? Well, we make up a checklist using just these things that people tell us. are the properties. Which one is older, which one is younger, which one you know better, which one is more movable, and so forth and so on. Kind of do it both ways, of course. And keep changing the predicate. You can do it with similarity, the Zub married the Rith, and so forth and so on. For some sample, we use 12 samples of these symmetrical predicates, and the subjects just have to tick off who they think is older, the Zub or the Rith, okay? And we don't do anything fancy in the way of statistics, something just very simple. So if you did what I predict, you put the ground object in the object position. I'll give you a score of 1, but if you put it in the subject position, I'll give you a score of -1. So if there's no orderliness in how you treat subs and rifts, under a symmetrical comparison, the numbers ought to come out roughly 0. But instead they always come out positive, giving the scoring, and they come out very strongly positively, and it doesn't, and it's true across all of the symmetrical predicates that we test. And more interesting to me, it's true of all the undergraduates, the ones who are literary and the ones who have tenures. It doesn't make any difference. It's a fundamental property of how the semantics of symmetry gets done in human language. Okay, so that's just a repetition. Okay. Well, it would be very surprising at the same time if there weren't a way to express symmetry symmetrically, so to speak, in a human language. Right? It would be sort of surprising if you always had to have this figure-ground relationship and you could never just do it neutrally. Well, of course, as you immediately see here, that's a perfectly easy way to express symmetry here, in the case of meat, and now it's behaving itself more in the ways that you would expect. Okay, so the two compared entities are appearing in a single argument position, because they're both subcomponents of the subject-noun phrase, right? And they are conjoined with the quintessentially symmetrical conjunction, namely and here is the comparison, right? And now, I didn't bring these numbers, but they're perfectly obvious. Do people now care? I can just switch these down, phrases again. John and Bill, Red China, and North Korea. Do people care? Do they judge them as being different from each other? What is this, 10 minutes? Good, okay. No, they don't care. Okay, there's a little difference. Because people, there's always a little difference. People never really behave themselves perfectly. So, you get a little differences within that. So, let me take a minute just to lay out what here's how you really tell a symmetrical from asymmetrical predicate. Because you notice, it looks as an ordinary plain vanilla intransitives, like walk or drown, occur in the same structure. That's a symmetrical student. So you can say things like the man and the woman drown, and you can say things like the shirt and the button match. And on the surface they look exactly the same, right? But if you think about the entailment structure, it's entirely different. First of all, we say the man and the woman drowns. It follows that the woman drowns and that the man drowns, and so forth and so on. This is easy to do, okay? But it doesn't follow that the man and the woman drown each other. I say a man and a woman drown, it does not mean they drown each other. Okay? But now if you move over and look at the symmetrical predicates in what looks like the same sort of thing, but just a different verb, they're acting completely different. So if you say the shirt and the button matches, it's hard even to claim that there's a sentence the shirt matches. You certainly couldn't start out a conversation that way, or they carry you away to the movie act. Okay, so it sort of doesn't exist, or it's highly elliptical, highly presuppositional to say something like the button match. Meanwhile, it does seem to imply it's reciprocal. Okay, so if I say that the shirt and the button match, it follows that they match each other. Okay? So there's this huge difference between symmetricals and ordinary. Now it's true that if you change the order, we already saw from Tversky's work that you get a difference, but it's not the big difference I mean, it's roughly true that if the button matches the shirt matches the button. So the deviations from symmetry, as Tversky said, are very small, as opposed to very huge with these symmetries. Okay. Oh, so I don't have to go through this. It's so obvious. You can, again, because Henry Gleitman said to me, psychologists don't care with your clever sentences. If it's true, prove it. So we actually did these laboratory. You could show the asked people which do you prefer, the singular or the plural. They prefer the singular for intransit, regular intransit, they prefer the plural. If they're symmetrical, if you ask them how close are these in meaning, the shirt and the button match and the shirt and the button match each other, people say they're quite close in meaning. If you say the principle and the pupil hurry, or they hurry each other, people say they're maximally different in meaning. So it's easy to get these intuitions. So now, finally, to the learning question. And as I say, I've spent some years, decades, saying to graduate students, why don't you study how little children learn which are the symmetrical predicates? Most of the graduate students do something else, but I keep trying, some do it, they don't find out the answer. I mean, I think you always know which are the symmetrical predicates, but I can't prove that. And that's why we're sort of turning things on their heads and saying, well, if you invented your own language, do you know about symmetricals? Do you deal with them differently? Do you know the difference between symmetricals and reciprocals? John and Bill drowned each other. It's not symmetrical, it's just reciprocal. When does a language build these subtle formal characteristics in? The quick answer to that is these distinctions are there from the earliest cohort. That is, the first, because all of this has been recorded, the first speakers, or signers, made these distinctions. And they're still alive, they're only 30 years old, and they still make these distinctions. So, I mean, people like our Penn group who studies language always says, well, look, if there's an abstract word and you can't get evidence from the evidence of your senses, like you're good for doggy, or maybe even for jump, look to the structure. There's a difference in the structure of the language, and it'll give you some insight into how people are reverse engineering language to discover the semantic properties from their God-given ability to read semantics of the first structure trees. So that's the general position. this work as I can't go through this, was really started from insights from Susan Meadow on the fact that coming around a few minutes ago, that children inventing their own language, these isolated home signers, use words like snore and give in different structures, different number of manifestations. They can do that without having heard it in their environment or seen it in their environment. And it's San Barbara Landowner in some later work asked, how can blind children understand the meaning of verbs like see? Well, again, by noticing that mental verbs are the kinds of predicates that take whole events, that is whole sentences, as their objects. And you can sort of recover the argument structure, the semantics, from looking at, listening to the kinds of sentences in which your mother says see. So she says, let's see if there's cheese in the refrigerator, but she doesn't say, let's check if there's cheese in the refrigerator. Well, maybe you should check if there's cheese in the refrigerator. So, starting from that point of view, one would say that any child who wants to learn about symmetry should be saying, oh, I want to learn French, I want to learn Greek, I want to learn Spanish, I certainly don't want to learn English. Right? Because there you go, in French, there's that telltale little say, okay? So when you have a symmetrical or even a reciprocal, there's something in the structure that's going to tell you that boo-hoo, English is sort of a mess in this regard, and as I've said at length, the plain intransitive and the symmetrical look alike. So you're not getting any help from the structure. So, Nicaraguan sign language. How do they do it? Well, I've tried to tell you why. One main reason we're interested because how could these little illiterate people build up this kind of structure and distinction? But the second reason is that Nicaraguan Sign Language has a property which some other languages have, which is called an animacy hierarchy, which in this language shows up by the fact that the more animate entity has to appear higher in the tree than the less animate entity. Okay? So you can say things like, a woman hit a ball, but you can't say things like a ball hit a woman in this language. And you can't even say a woman hit a man. Well, that's no good. You have to be able to say these things. So what do? Here's what the language does. It breaks it apart into two intransitives. It says, the woman hit, the man got hit. Okay? So it's all these one-place predicates like this, right? I'm going to show you a video. I'm going to show you 3 videos and then I'll be finished. And the first one just shows you how to say a woman hit a man in Nicaraguan Sign Language. So here's the sign for man. This is very sexist. Sign for man, sign for women. And essentially what you do is you say, a woman hit, a man got hit. But, as Billy and Sankoff also pointed out for Tarpeson, the verbs tend to migrate together. So what you really say is a man, because it's object, subject, verb. A man, a woman hit, got hit. Okay. And the hit, I'm going to show you punch and got punched. Okay. So I'm going to show you this. And what the subjects are doing here, what you're going to see is the signer looks down. Pre-recorded was a video showing a woman punching a man. And the subject's task is just to say this and describe this in Nicaraguan sign. Okay, so now we can pray that oops, that the video works. Okay. Let's see. How do you get it started? You only tell me how to work 2 buttons. How do you get it to play? You better stay here. Man, the woman, punished. Oh, it's froze before he said, got punished. Man, woman, punished. Got punished. So that's where to stay here because that's true. I'll never be able to. All right, so how would you say a man and woman punched each other? Well, it's a whole Megillah, okay? Because you'll say a man, a woman, then something like each other, some sign for each other, okay? And then first punch, okay? And then got punched. Right? So, your turn. Man, woman, each other, first punch, got punched. Okay. So it's it's like saying man punched you. Instead of saying punch each other, say one man punched a woman, the other woman also punched the man, so they punch each other. And there you go. Okay. So now here's the $64 question. Is meat dealt with? Meat is a symmetrical, or in the case we're going to use, it's going to be, meat. Is meat going to act like a reciprocal? Or is this baby language going to make a distinction between how it deals with symmetricals and how it deals with reciprocals? Because think about it, meat is just one predication. It's like that. You've heard the joke, one hand, the salad, one hand clapping. You can't do that. If you see this, it's not one hand clapping. It takes these 2 things. Similarly for meaning, it's a comparison. It's got to be 2. So, it's a single predication. You can't break it in half in the way you could symmetrical. Okay, so now we'll have the, all right, meeting, okay? Right, you gotta go back. A man, a woman, meet. Ta-da! No separate predication. So a delicate distinction is made by whom? You know, not some fancy grammarians or anything. It's just doing what comes naturally. And it's just a figure that shows you that this is a regular fact with a lot of predicates and subjects. So just to sum up, I tried to show you 2 things. I don't know why I'm reading this to you. Symmetry is a lexical property, but it's also reflected in the semantics of syntactic structure. And language uses this asymmetric construction to remove sort of the vacuity of the formal symmetricals and tell you in what respect, or at least hint to you, in what respects the comparison is being made. What's the answer to the question of how children discover symmetricals? Well, I hope the Nicaraguan Sign Language evidence goes some way to saying this isn't really something you have to learn. You don't have to learn it any more than you have to learn triangle in a serious sense. You might have to learn some item that expresses it in English, but you don't have to learn about notions like symmetry and reciprocality. They're just going to show up because that's the nature of human cognition, and that's the way humans express meanings in a natural language. So, thank you very much.
So Lila pleases the audience. I think we have time for one question. But
That was a tour de force, just beautiful.
Thank you.
That was just beautiful. So, language forces order. So you say man and woman, you don't say woman and man. Etiquette forces us, or there is an etiquette about who you introduce to whom, right? It's not random. You're supposed to introduce one person to another, not. So then you want to ask, what makes us order beyond language, right? So time does, attention does, because it occurs in order. You see children asking, what's your favorite color, right? So I think there's something about us that orders things and wants things to be rank ordered. I mean, this is related to numbers in some way or another. And you've shown us at what great lengths you have to go to create symmetry, right? Because I think we're fighting this natural tendency to order things. Where that comes from?
Well, you know, when you speak a language, the words come out one at a time.
Exactly,
So serialization is forced.
right.
However, is it really important in all languages? It's very important in English. As you move to inflected languages, it becomes less important.
Right.
Because you have local script got done to, so you move them accordingly. Languages go to this other extreme. You have languages in which, within a clause at least, and somewhat beyond, there isn't any word at all. You can do it any way you want. And it's left to all this local information to, so it didn't have to be ordered.
But life is order.
Nor is serial well, there is. And
so we'll have one more question, but before your question, right when we leave here, please do not go to lunch, but gather by the reception table, and we're going to take a quick group shot, group photo. Okay? So just so you know, you're not going to be allowed to leave the building.
This follows on Barbara's question. I have actually a paper on this, believe it or not. When you do conjunctions, we did this across over 10 languages. You almost always put the positive word first. So in English, you say good and bad. You can say bad. You say happy or sad. You say win or lose. And we found this across many languages. So the man-woman example she's giving could be subsumed under that in some sense men are thought to be more positive than women traditionally. So I think there's a lot of these order, even that's not a semantic thing, I mean, because it's just a function, and that's in the sense that you're describing. But I think there are a lot of biases like this that are across languages. Another one is that the short syllable word and the shorter word comes before the longer word. That
and
also
if you
doesn't
have
matter
a
anymore.
whiskey,
What?
if you have mixed, if you make a cocktail, the one with the higher whiskey content comes first.
The higher
Rather than the
whiskey.
one with the less, right? So we say whiskey and soda, not
You
soda.
mean scotch
whiskey
and,
soda.
scotch and beer?
Yeah, so there's a million things like
Yes.
this. So that's what I said to you when I said John and Bill. I said people don't care, but they do care a little bit. So the language is very compact. I mean, it takes every little tiny piece of structure and it does something with it. So there is some different, even conjunction, which is supposed to be perfectly symmetrical, isn't quite. There are these little preferences, the kind of things you're talking about, Sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't get them replaceable. But the difference between saying John and between saying North Korea and Red China are similar. Red China and North Korea are similar. It's a very small difference. It's unstable across subjects, and it's small. But the difference between saying North Korea is similar to Red China and Red China is similar, that's huge. Why? Because serial order isn't enough, bottom line in language, it's hierarchical position in a structure. So I agree with you, those are real effects, but they're very, very small compared to the kinds of effects you get when you vary hierarchical structure. Right? So the change from John and Bill to Bill and John is nothing in a conjunction as compared to what it is when they're the subject and the object of apprehension.
I agree with that, but what was interesting and what we found is that people agree completely that you say good
Well,
and
not
bad.
completely. People
I mean, the preference is very strong, so it's a minor, I understand what you're saying,
Yeah.
but I think we want to explain what Barbara was asking, why across cultures are certain words, so.
The phenomenon you state is a true one. The dominant one comes first. If you look across all experiments on the issue you're talking about, and all sorts of properties, in a conjunction, the dominant one comes serially first. In a symmetrical comparison, the dominant one comes serially second. And so they don't act alike in the first place. So it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
It's an interesting phenomenon, but somewhat different.
If Irving Goffman were here, he'd answer Paul as follows. I mean, I've been asked this question forever. By the way, in mathematics, more is first, less.
Yes, more.
Okay.
You say 2 and 2 is 4, not 4 is 3.
Okay, I just did it, but for the examples you're talking about, whenever there's a difference, social structure favors the person or the thing that's higher. And that's a fundamental fact.
One is good higher than bad.
Well, still good.
It is.
So how about if we continue this wonderful discussion over lunch? Thank you. If we can get out to the reception for the picture really, really fast, Morris Moskovich and Jill can be in our photos because they have to catch a taxi, so we're fast.
I know, and I was so sad I missed it. Yeah,
Oh, no.
I know, I was so sorry to miss it.
And you know what's interesting, but foreign speakers don't know it. You know, second language.
Oh, yeah, did you?
No. Do it again? I think I would be able to accomplish a simple task. This time we're going to press send.
Wait, yeah, right, now we're gonna press send, and I'm gonna send the actual slides. So you'll get, you came out well. So
Thank you
not-
very
I
much
mean,
for the memento.
Yeah, not everybody, but you were quite photogenic, so it's funny.
Thank
And
you so
in
much.
addition to giving an amazing talk. Where, down here?
No, I think you took it up.
I didn't want to say you have to know about these dreams.
Well, and you should teach them.
Yeah, but I all the time.
Just kidding. I wanted to ask whether Nick Robb and sign language had a difference between John Madden, Mary, and Mary and John Madden. They express these ways. I don't know, I'm just picking up this stuff. I do one side, put it on the stage, and then come back and do the other side.
There are things that go on behind the scenes that.
Yes. I'll get a garbage can in a minute.
So is it raining out there or not?
No, it's beautiful out there.
So this is the one.
Yes. I'm not sure, but I assume we can make as many copies as we need.
Well,
Right, Rodgers?
Sure.
Are we gonna post it someplace? Do we know, did she say anything yet? I'm not sure yet. We're not sure what she has in mind yet, but
Right, okay,
whatever they wanna do.
okay, good.
Post what?
So, did Rochel
I mean-
say anything about what you're doing with the video?
No.
No? Okay, so we're not.
You told me that.
We can do whatever we darn well please.
Okay. It's a whole of a lot of video, that's all I can tell you.
We can get a garbage bag.
Host seminars just about yearly with a variety of Rutgers faculty members. And Lila knows Randy and Rochel as a colleague and friend from the early golden days at Penn and has known them from the very beginning on. So now, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So just a few words about how I met and have interacted forever after with Randy and Rochel. Improbably, I was the linguist at birth. And by training, when I came out of graduate school, and to my surprise, and I think saying something about what they mean by the golden years at Penn, although I had never taken a course in psychology, I found myself invited to become a faculty member in the Department of Psychology at Penn, which was absolutely wonderful, as you've been hearing from everybody. And so, of course, by then I was too old to be a student of Randy and Rochel. But even so, since I knew nothing about psychology, I learned psychology from this wonderful faculty, from Randy and Rochel, from my husband Henry, and a few other people in the Penn psychology department who were thinking very much in an interdisciplinary. So it isn't as if you'd be less likely to say it means the same thing. It means something different. So if you meant something different, you would say it in another way. Or else, as in the cases I showed you, you change who's dominant in this category. And I kind of love these answers because they're very clear when you look at the spatial one, right? So, yeah, if you have this great, huge, concrete bicycle statue in the square, it's stable. You know where it is. There's this teeny garage on wheels going around it. Okay. Then you would say, the garage is near the bicycle. Well, this is my favorite. I love this guy who said, if I park my bicycle somewhere, and I was down, somebody built a garage next to it. So, which is familiar to you, which is the standard in some sense. Okay. So, here's some interdisciplinary comments now. Okay. So this is the way, madly oversimplified, linguists would think about these constructions that I've been using. Because it isn't just a concept, it was a concept in a sentence, in a construction. And it isn't the case when you say a sentence of this kind that what you're doing is just shifting position. You're shifting, it is true that you're shifting which is serially first in English, in such a description. But it's more than that because, at least according to linguists, words are organized, words and phrases are organized in sentences in terms of a hierarchical structure. And then when you make a comparison of this sort, that first noun phrase, called the subject of the sentence, is that noun phrase that's immediately dominated by the sentence. That's very high up in the tree. And as for the object, it isn't just second. In fact, you can do passive. And this will remain the same. The serial order will change.
Why across cultures are certain words? So,
the phenomenon you state is a true one. The dominant one comes first. If you look across all experiments on the issue you're talking about, and all sorts of properties, in a conjunction, the dominant one comes serially first. In a symmetrical comparison, the dominant one becomes serially second. And, okay, they don't act alike in the first place. So it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
It's an interesting phenomenon, but somewhat different.
If Irving Goffman were here, he'd answer Paul as follows. I mean, I've been asked this question forever. By the way, in mathematics, more is first, less. Okay.
Yeah, say 2 and 2 is 4, not 4 is 3.
more or less.
Okay. Yeah, I just did it, but for the examples you're talking about, whenever there's a difference, social structure favors the person or the thing that's higher. And that's a fundamental fact.
Why is good higher than bad?
Well, still good.
It is.
So how about if we continue the discussion over lunch?